Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. In my case, this really is another Torah Tuesday today because this is my second attempt to record this video. In the process of making it, I recorded a great first take, and as I was working on the graphics, I realized that my translation was wrong. When I looked at the Hebrew again, I realized I needed to tweak it. So I just want to thank you all for giving me the chance to do a deep dive into my own work and for caring what the text means and for giving me this opportunity to communicate it with you, because it actually helps to sharpen my arguments along the way. So here we are, we're all human, and I'm learning on the go. So today we're in Exodus 5, verse 22. We're going to do the last two verses of chapter 5 and then the first verse of chapter 6. And I'll begin by reading my very freshly revised translation of these verses. The setting of this is the conflict that Moses has had with Pharaoh. Moses confronted Pharaoh. Pharaoh would not let them go. He made their work harder. That caused a lot of discomfort for the Hebrews. The Hebrew overseers came and complained to Moses and Aaron and said, "Why did you cause this?" And now Moses is going to God with this complaint. So we pick it up in verse 22. And Moses turned to Yahweh and said, "Lord, why have you caused harm for this people? Is this why you've sent me? From the time I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought harm for this people, and you have certainly not delivered your people." And Yahweh said to Moses, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them away, and with a strong hand he will drive them out from his land." The first thing to note right off the bat is that Moses is upset, and he is bringing a very honest lament to God, a complaint, in fact, for God's own policies, for God's own lack of action in the matter of bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. You can imagine his predicament. God called him to do this work, and now it seems like instead of finding success, he's faced with failure. And so he brings this to God and says, "This doesn't seem like it's working the way you told me it was going to." The people blamed Moses, and then Moses blamed God for bringing harm on the people. Now, the word harm in Hebrew is ra'ah, and it's a verb to bring harm or to do evil. In English, we often see it translated as evil, but in English, evil always has a morally objectionable dimension to it, like someone is doing the wrong thing. In Hebrew, the word ra'ah, or the noun, the verb ra'ah or the noun ra, denotes anything that's unpleasant or negative, even if it's not morally objectionable. So when God brings just punishment for sin, it will often use the same word. The punishment is unpleasant, so it's ra'ah. But here, Moses first blames God for the harm, and then he blames Pharaoh for the harm. They seem to be in cahoots with each other. Neither one of them is making life any easier for the people. Note that Moses doesn't use God's personal name in this passage. He doesn't say Yahweh. He says Adonai, or Lord, Master. And Moses' hesitation to address God by name in this verse, I think, sets us up for Yahweh's self-declaration in chapter 6, verse 2, which we'll deal with next week, where God re-emphasizes the significance of the name Yahweh. Moses' prayer is grammatically choppy and emotionally charged. He is in a difficult situation, and his prayer falls in line with a whole tradition in the Bible of lament prayer. If you've read the Psalms before, you've seen that the psalmists often pray very frankly about their predicament and even blame God for it. Psalm 89 is my favorite example of this. You can go check it out and see how similar it is to this verse. And that takes us to chapter 6, verse 1, where Yahweh responds to Moses' lament. And he invited Moses to watch his deliverance at work. He says, "Now you're ready to see me act." It's as if the struggle that the Israelites are going through and the hard-heartedness of Pharaoh is the backdrop against which God wants to show his most powerful work of deliverance. So what seemed to be a failure was just setting the stage. It was just a starting block for what God wanted to do. There's an interesting thing going on in verse 1. As God responds, he talks about the strong hand, and the Hebrew is quite ambiguous about whose strong hand it is. In fact, Moshe Greenberg, who's a Jewish Hebrew Bible scholar, calls this phrase exquisitely ambiguous because, and you may have noticed that in my translation, for with a strong hand he will send them away. With a strong hand, he will drive them out from his land. Is this God's strong hand that's forcing Pharaoh to act? Or is this Pharaoh's strong hand that is sending them away with force? It's not entirely clear here, and I think that's on purpose. I think that the narrator is drawing us in, inviting us into the story to see how things will unfold. Yahweh has assured Moses of eventual victory, but we don't know exactly how that's going to play out and what kind of wrestling match there's going to be between God and Pharaoh. So 3 takeaways from this week's passage that I think are so powerful. Number 1, God invites honest prayer. He doesn't chastise Moses for praying so boldly and for placing the blame at God's feet. He responds. He responds to the prayer and doesn't tell Moses that he shouldn't have said these things. Number 2, just because God calls us to do something does not mean that it's going to be easy. Moses had a clear call from God, and yet he encounters great difficulty. And that leads us to the 3rd takeaway, which is that our struggles are the backdrop against which God can demonstrate his most powerful deliverance. So I don't know what you're going through right now, what kind of struggles you're encountering, what kind of hang-ups there have been in your attempt to be faithful to what you feel God's called you to do. And my word to you is pray honestly, bring that struggle to God, and then wait patiently and watch as he takes action on your behalf. Blessings and have a great week.